Hello, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book review. This is the show where I take a book that I found at a used bookstore and discuss it, rant about it, rave about it, review it. Today, the book I am going to be covering is this: Garrison Keillor's Lake Wobegon Days. For those that don't know, Garrison Keillor he's still alive, but he was a radio show host. He hosted the Prairie Home Companion, which was on public radio for several decades. It had comedy bits, it had guest presenters, guest musicians. It was a country slash folksy show. It had an atmosphere and aura of progressive values to it. Lake Wobegon Days is based off of the titular Lake Wobegon, a fictional town that Garrison Keillor would present in each episode of A Prairie Home Companion. It was a Mayberry-esque Midwestern small town. For lack of a better word, Lake Wobegon is homey. And so you hear about people that are shy, that are respectfully shy, that they mind their own business except when they're not. The way that Lake Wobegon was described by Garrison Keillor during A Prairie Home Companion was, "It's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, Minnesota, my hometown out there on the edge of the prairie. The little town that time forgot and that decades cannot improve." And lastly, "That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average." And, that closing line, funny, because the stories he often described were opposite that mentality. Here on page 6 is a good example of the kind of homey story that you would see in Lake Wobegon Days. "In our hearts, our loyalties to home have always been more modest, along the lines of the motto on the town crest, Sumus quod sumus, we are what we are, and the annual Christmas toast of the Sons of Newt, there's no place like home when you're not feeling well, first uttered by a long ago Newt who missed the annual dinner dance due to a case of the trots, and even Mr. Diner's observation, when you're around it all the time, you don't notice it so much." He said this after he tore out the wall between his living room and dining room, which he had not done before for fear that it was there for a reason. In the wall, he found the remains of a cat who had been missing for more than a year. The diners had not been getting full use of the dining room and had been silently blaming each other. "It's good to know that it wasn't us," he said. There's a footnote right after "we always fell short." "I grew up among slow talkers, men in particular, who dropped words a few at a time like beans in a hill, and when I got to Minneapolis where people took a Lake Wobegon comma to mean the end of a story, I couldn't speak a whole sentence in company and was considered not too bright. So I enrolled in a speech course taught by Orville Sand, the founder of reflexive relaxology, a self-hypnotic technique that enabled a person to speak up to 300 words per minute. He believed that slow speech deprives us of a great deal of thought by slowing down the mental processes to one word's rate." The footnote presented just now kind of gives you a feel of the footnotes that you would see in the rest of the story, which is the book has stories about very plain people and very plain events, and the footnotes expand upon that in very funny ways. Another good example of the kind of attitude you get, in a way it's a self-hatred attitude, in the chapter News, which talks about how there's only one newspaper in Lake Wobegon. It is published every Tuesday and mailed second class to some 1,500 subscribers, most of whom don't live there anymore and wouldn't if you paid them. But those people shell out $30 a year to read about it. They're Herald's bread and butter, retirees in Tampa and Tucson and San Diego who keep track of old chums through the obituaries, and people who ran away from home to escape winter and much more, for whom the paper, a gift subscription from Mother, is fresh evidence of a life worth leaving. And then in the footnotes, it eventually gets to talking about how there was one young man who, he went off to Massachusetts, I think it was, for school, and he realized how maladjusted he had been because of the atmosphere that he had been raised in. And so he writes a manuscript of 95, which is 95 theses. The whole script of the 95 theses gets lost under a bunch of other papers on this guy's desk, and some of them end up with coffee stains, so you don't even get to read all 95 theses. And the 95 theses in this is all in the footnote. So the chapter itself keeps on going without this 95 theses, but the section goes on and on and on, and it starts with, "You have fed me wretched food, vegetables boiled to extinction, fistfuls of white sugar, slabs of fat, mucousy casseroles made with globs of cream of mushroom, until it's amazing my heart still beats. Food was not fuel, but ballast. We ate and then we sank like rocks. Every Sunday, everyone got stoned on dinner except the women who cooked it and thereby lost their appetites. The rest of us did our duty and ate ourselves into a gaseous stupor and sat around in a trance and mumbled like a bunch of beef heads." Number 3, on the same page, "You have subjected me to endless boring talk about weather, regularity, back problems, and whether something happened in 1938 or 1939, insisting that I sit quietly and listen to every word. How's it going with you, you said. Oh, about the same, you replied. Cold enough for you? It was always cold, always about the same. But eventually it gets to a part about, I find it very hard to whoop it up, hail a pal, split a gut, cut a rug, have a ball, or make a joyful noise. I'm your boy, all right. And then it progresses. The fear of poverty and illness, brought on by a sudden craving for cheap wine, a flaw in my character, a weak seam, and one day I bend down to tie my shoes and hear a rip in my head, and on the way to work I pick up a gallon of muscatel and spend my lunch hour in the alley. A month later I have no job, no house, no car, and my nose is dark purple and swollen to the size of an eggplant. My voice is like sandpaper. I cough up gobs of phlegm. My liver feels like a sandbag. My teeth are rotten stumps. I crap in my pants and lurch toward strangers, mumbling about spare change. The flaw was created by disobeying you. Someday you'll find out, you said, and I probably will. 39, damn. 40, damn. 41, damn. 42, damn. Eventually, 43 through 55 are missing, but 43 through 55 was 3 full pages of paper. Part of the issue that he had is, pardon my French, 61. A clean house distinguished us from colored people. 62. Bigotry is never a pleasant subject, so you didn't bring it up, but you stuck by your guns anyway. Indians were drunks, Jews were thieves, and the colored were shiftless. Where you got this, I don't know, because there were none of them around, but you believed it more absolutely for the utter lack of evidence. Everyone knew about those people. It was common sense. 63 through 67 are obliterated by a beverage stain. And then further on, he talks about number 80. This is one I can't say. It's true and it's important, having to do with sexual identity, but if I said it, I'd hear you saying, how can you say that? And I know I'd feel guilty, so I won't. You know what I mean. 81. Another thing of the same sort. 82. Another. And so these theses, which is meant to solely expand upon a goofy idea about someone sending in a big old letter and then it never getting published, and then when he finally requested it back so he could scan it and use it in his thesis, the newspaper where he had sent it to had it under so many papers, and so much was lost, and so much was lost because of coffee stains or other kinds of beverage stains, that what emerged was just a footnote in this chapter about the news and all the different things that do and don't happen in the town. The book is about the history of Lake Wobegon, this made up, banal, boring story about a town that nothing happens in it. This whole book reads like it's a parody of like that good old conservative mindset in a town, leading it to ruin. And in a way it probably is, because the entire point of Lake Wobegon is to be a joke of a town, but one that's supposed to feel good and Midwestern at times, and normal, and good old American, and country values. All of these different facets come into this book, and at times it's really boring, at times it's really funny at the absurdity of how mundane the issues are, of some of it's just making fun of the different sects of Christianity, and how everything just rolls into one petty mindset. All of it is just so hilariously boring. It's a fantastic book. It speaks to a ideal I think Americans have about everything having been better in the past, and he just makes fun of it the entire book, but in a respectful way. And I think that's the kind of audience that this is looking for. People that wish that America and its culture were more wholesome, but realize it isn't. It's people that wish it could be better, but also wish it could go back and dial back to a time where it wasn't. It's a book about loneliness and isolation and growing out of it. If you have the money for it, I'd say buy it. I'd buy it if it was new. I'd buy it if it was used. Anyway, this has been a used book review. My name is Wildstag. Thank you for tuning in.